Welcome to Listen and Learn English. Today you will practice your English by listening to a powerful story, and at the same time, you will learn an important life lesson about success. This lesson is not about grammar rules or difficult vocabulary. It is about mindset, discipline, and the small habits that can change a life. Let me ask you an important question. Can a person succeed without going to school? Many people believe that success belongs only to those who have diplomas, degrees, and long years of education. They think that without a classroom, without teachers, and without certificates, real success is impossible. But is that really true? Some people never sat at a school desk. They never wore a uniform. They never studied engineering or business at a university. Yet later in life, they built companies. They designed machines. They created new ideas in industries like cars and motorcycles. Their names became respected, even famous. This is a powerful contrast. On one side, there is no formal education. On the other side, there is global success. On one side, there are grease-stained hands working in a small repair shop. On the other side, there is a confident entrepreneur speaking in meetings and leading a company. On one side, there is a noisy workshop floor. On the other side, there is a quiet office and serious business decisions. How can these two worlds connect? Today's story is about a man who never went to school in his entire life. While other children learned math and science, he learned how to hold heavy tools. While other children read books in class, he cleaned engine parts and carried metal pieces. While other teenagers talked about exams and homework, he worked long hours in a hot and noisy garage. People did not see him as special. They saw a poor boy with dirty clothes and tired hands. They saw a worker who would always stay a worker. They did not imagine that he could ever lead a business or design something important. However, inside him, there was something different. He felt curious when he looked at engines. He did not only see metal and oil, he saw questions. He wanted to understand how things worked and why they sometimes failed. He watched experienced mechanics very carefully. He listened when customers described problems. He remembered small details. Many workers around him finished their job and forgot about it. They worked for money, and when the day ended, their thinking also ended. But this young man was different. Even after work, he kept thinking about what he had seen and what he had learned. This brings us to the key question. How does a man who never went to school succeed in industries like cars or motorcycles? Was he lucky? Was he born with special talent? Or did he discover a simple habit that changed everything? Today, you will learn about the secret habit that made the difference in his life. It was not magic, and it was not expensive. It was a small daily action, repeated again and again, until it became powerful. As you listen to this story, think about your own life. Think about your own dreams. Now let me tell you about a boy who never saw the inside of a classroom but changed his life inside a workshop. A childhood of work, not school. The boy was born in a small town where money was always short and work was always heavy. His family did not talk about dreams or future plans. They talked about food, rent, and survival. His father worked long hours fixing machines, and his mother tried to save every coin. When he was old enough to understand simple words, he understood one clear truth. There was no money for school. While other children in the neighborhood woke up early to put on clean uniforms, he woke up early to follow his father to a repair shop. He watched children walk past him with backpacks full of books. He carried metal parts and tools that were sometimes heavier than his own arms. They learned letters and numbers in a classroom. He learned the names of tools and the smell of oil. In the classroom, teachers explained theory with chalk on a board. In the repair shop, engines explained reality with noise and heat. Other children solved math problems on paper. He tightened bolts on real machines. They raised their hands to answer questions. He raised heavy equipment to help his father. The difference was clear. Their hands were clean at the end of the day. His hands were black with grease. Their clothes smelled like soap. His clothes smelled like fuel and metal. Sometimes he looked at his reflection in a dirty window and felt ashamed. He wondered if he was less important because he did not go to school. When children talked about homework and exams, he stayed silent. He did not understand their words. When they asked him what grade he was in, he changed the topic. Inside his heart, he felt small. He could not read well. He could write only simple words. Technical manuals in the shop looked like a foreign language to him. The pages were full of long words and complex explanations. Customers often came to the shop with confident voices. They used technical terms and spoke quickly. The boy stood behind his father and listened. He tried to understand, but many words were too difficult. When his father asked him to bring a specific tool, he sometimes needed to ask twice because he did not know the correct name. Yet something important was growing inside him. Even though he felt shame, he also felt curiosity. He did not only see broken motorcycles and cars, he saw puzzles. When an engine stopped working, he wanted to know why. When a mechanic opened a machine, he moved closer to watch every detail. He watched carefully how parts connected to each other. He observed how a small mistake could cause a big problem. He noticed that experienced mechanics did not only use strength, they used understanding. They listened to the sound of the engine. They touched the surface to feel vibration. They looked at small signs that others ignored. The boy began to copy this behavior. He listened to the sound of engines even when no one asked him to. He touched parts gently to understand their shape and purpose. He asked simple questions, even when he felt embarrassed. Sometimes older workers smiled kindly. Sometimes they ignored him, but he kept asking. At night, when he lay on his bed, he thought about what he had seen during the day. He imagined the inside of engines in his mind. He tried to remember how each part moved. While other children dreamed about school success, he dreamed about machines running smoothly because of his hands. Still, the feeling of being uneducated followed him everywhere. One afternoon, a customer came with a motorcycle that would not start. The customer spoke quickly and used a technical word the boy had never heard before. The man turned to the boy and asked him to explain the problem. The boy froze. He did not know the word. He did not know how to answer. The customer laughed and said that even a child in school would know that basic term. The laughter was not loud, but it was sharp. It cut deeply into the boy's heart. He felt his face grow hot. He looked down at his dirty hands and wished for a moment that he were invisible. That evening, while the shop became quiet and the sun went down, he replayed the moment again and again in his mind. He felt shame, but he also felt something stronger than shame. He felt a new kind of fire. That day, something changed inside him. The silent decision to master a craft. That night, he did not sleep quickly. The customers' laughter stayed in his ears. He looked at his hands in the dark and felt two choices in his heart. He could complain about his life and blame poverty for everything, or he could decide to become stronger than his situation. Many people complain when life is hard. Many people say, "I am poor, so I cannot succeed." It is easy to blame the past. It is easy to say that without school there is no future. But as he lay awake, he understood something important. Complaining would not teach him new words. Blaming poverty would not fix engines better. So he made a silent decision. He said to himself, "If I cannot go to school, I will let machines be my teachers." This decision changed the direction of his life. He stopped feeling sorry for himself. He stopped comparing his life to the lives of children in uniforms. Instead of thinking about what he did not have, he began to think about what he could build. The next day, nothing looked different from the outside. The same noisy workshop, the same smell of oil, the same heavy tools. But inside him there was a new attitude. He did not only work because his father told him to work. He worked because he wanted to learn. After the shop closed each evening, when other workers washed their hands and went home, he started to stay a little longer. At first, he stayed only 10 extra minutes, then 20, then 1 full hour. He chose one broken engine and carefully disassembled it, piece by piece. He did not rush. He wanted to understand. He placed each part on the table and looked at it closely. He touched the surface. He studied the shape. He asked himself why this piece was important. When he did not understand, he observed the senior mechanics during the day. He watched how they solved problems. He noticed the order in which they opened parts. He paid attention to small details that others ignored. He began to see patterns. Some engines failed because of poor maintenance. Others failed because of small hidden damage. He realized that machines tell stories if you listen carefully. A strange sound can mean a loose part. A small leak can mean a bigger problem inside. This was not learning from books. This was learning from experience. His classroom had no walls. His teacher was not a person. His teacher was every engine that stopped working. Then something even more powerful began. Every night, after he returned home and finished dinner, he did not fall into bed immediately. Even when his body felt tired, he forced himself to sit quietly for a few minutes. He closed his eyes and reviewed the day in his mind. He asked himself simple questions. What broke today? Why did it fail? How was it repaired? He mentally replayed every important repair. He imagined opening the engine again, step by step. He tried to remember the exact order. If he forgot something, he felt uncomfortable, and that feeling pushed him to pay more attention the next day. Sometimes he found a small notebook and wrote short notes in simple words. His spelling was not perfect, but that did not stop him. The notebook was not for school. It was for growth. It was his private record of mistakes and solutions. This became his secret habit, although he did not call it that. Every day he worked. Every night he reviewed. Every morning he returned with clearer understanding. He was building knowledge slowly, like placing one small brick on another. There was a big contrast between him and other workers. They finished a repair and forgot about it. He finished a repair and studied it again in his mind. They worked for today's payment. He worked for tomorrow's improvement. Weeks passed. Nothing dramatic happened. No one clapped for him. No one gave him a title. Customers still saw him as a simple helper. From the outside, he looked the same. But inside, something strong was forming. He was training his mind to observe, to reflect, and to improve. He was building skill without a classroom, discipline without a teacher, and knowledge without a diploma. At first, no one noticed his effort, but he was building something invisible. The secret habit in action. Now we can clearly see the habit that slowly changed his life. It was simple, but it was powerful. Every day he reviewed. Every day he reflected. Every day he improved. He did not wait for a teacher. He did not wait for perfect conditions. He used what he had, and he used it daily. Each evening, after the workshop became quiet and the doors were closed, he stayed behind for a short time. The floor was still covered with dust. The smell of oil was still in the air. His hands were tired and sometimes painful. Small cuts burned when he touched metal. But instead of thinking only about rest, he thought about growth. He took out his small notebook. The pages were not clean. His handwriting was not beautiful. His spelling was sometimes wrong. But he did not feel ashamed anymore. He wrote short notes about the day. He wrote what problem he saw. He wrote how the engine was opened. He wrote what mistake was made and how it was fixed. Then he did something even more interesting. From memory, he tried to redraw engine parts. He closed his eyes for a moment and imagined the inside of the machine. He pictured the position of each piece. After that, he opened his eyes and sketched simple shapes in his notebook. The drawings were not perfect, but they forced his brain to remember. When he finished writing and drawing, he asked himself one important question: how can I do this better tomorrow? This question became his guide. It pushed him to search for small improvements. Maybe he could open the engine faster. Maybe he could organize tools more clearly. Maybe he could listen more carefully to strange sounds. There was a strong contrast between him and the other workers. When the workday ended, they washed their hands and left the shop without thinking about it again. For them, the day was finished. The problems stayed in the workshop. But for him, the real learning began after the official work was done. Other workers forgot the details of repairs. He studied them again in his mind. Other workers repeated the same mistakes because they never reviewed them. He tried to understand every mistake so he would not repeat it. Slowly, his way of thinking became different. His body felt heavy at night. Sometimes his back hurt from lifting engines. Sometimes his eyes wanted to close while he was writing. He felt the strong pull of sleep. But his mind stayed active. His mind was hungry. It wanted to understand more. It wanted to connect small lessons from each day. This was not loud ambition. He did not tell people about his routine. He did not post about it. No one praised him. It was lonely discipline. It was quiet hunger. He was training himself when no one was watching. Some evenings were harder than others. On very busy days, the shop was full of difficult repairs. He made small mistakes and felt frustrated. On those nights, it was tempting to skip his review. It was easy to say, "I am too tired." But he remembered his promise to himself. He remembered the laughter of the customer. That memory gave him strength. He understood something important. Talent is not enough. Opportunity is not enough. Improvement comes from repetition. Improvement comes from honest reflection. Each small review was like sharpening a knife. At first, the change was invisible, but with time, the edge became sharp. Weeks turned into months. His notebook filled with simple notes and rough drawings. His questions became deeper. His understanding became clearer. He began to see machines not as complicated mysteries, but as systems with logic. Months passed. His hands were still dirty, but his skills were becoming clean and sharp. From worker to problem solver, months of daily review began to change him in ways that others could finally see. At first, the change was small. He started to notice sounds that other workers ignored. A soft knock inside an engine told him something was loose. A light vibration told him a part was not balanced. While others waited for a machine to fully break, he could feel the problem early. Repetition trained his eyes and ears. Because he reviewed each repair at night, he remembered details clearly. When a similar problem appeared again, he did not feel confused. He felt prepared. He had seen this story before inside his mind. One morning, a customer brought a motorcycle that stopped suddenly on the road. The senior mechanic began checking many parts one by one. The young man stood nearby, listening carefully to the engine's weak sound. He quietly suggested checking a specific small part first. The senior mechanic looked surprised, but allowed him to try. Within minutes, the real problem was found. It was not luck. It was pattern recognition. He had seen the same signs before. He had reviewed them in his notebook. He had replayed them in his mind. Slowly, something new began to happen. Customers started noticing him. They saw that he did not rush. He listened carefully to their explanations. He asked simple but clear questions. Then he worked with focus. Repairs that once took him a long time now became faster and more organized. Before, he followed instructions. He waited for someone to tell him what to do. He carried tools and watched from the side. Now, he gave solutions. When a difficult case appeared, he did not step back. He stepped forward with calm confidence. He explained possible causes. He suggested clear steps. The difference between his past and present was powerful. In the past, he felt small when customers used technical words. Now, even if he did not know every term, he understood the machine itself. He understood how parts connected. He understood cause and effect. Knowledge built from repetition gave him quiet strength. Other workers sometimes asked him for advice. This surprised him at first. He was the boy who never went to school. He had no certificate on the wall. He had no official training, yet his hands moved with precision. His mind worked with logic. There was a strong emotional contrast in his life. On paper, he was uneducated. On paper, he had no proof of learning, but in reality, his education was written in experience. His diploma was daily repetition. His teacher was reflection. His exam was every engine that entered the workshop. He understood something important. Education on paper can open doors, but education through repetition builds mastery. A certificate can show that you studied. Skill shows that you practiced. He did not hate formal education. He simply accepted that his path was different. One afternoon, a customer returned after a difficult repair. The motorcycle was running perfectly. The customer smiled and said he had visited 2 other shops before coming here. No one else could solve the issue. He shook the young man's hand and said, "You understand machines." Those words were simple, but they felt heavy with meaning. For years he had felt ashamed of not going to school. In that moment, he felt respected for what he could do. Respect did not come from a document, it came from competence. More customers began asking for him by name. When they entered the shop, they looked around and said they wanted him to check their vehicle. The owner of the workshop noticed this change. He started giving him more responsibility. He trusted him with complex repairs. The boy who once carried tools without understanding now guided repairs with confidence. The child who felt small because he could not read technical manuals now understood engines deeply through practice. His journey showed a powerful truth. Repetition builds awareness. Awareness builds skill. Skill builds confidence. However, growth always brings new challenges. Success in a small workshop is one thing. Life outside can be unpredictable. Just when he began to feel stable, a new situation appeared that would test not only his skill, but also his courage. Then came the moment that tested everything. The crisis that changed his path. Everything changed suddenly. The workshop that had been his second home became quiet. One day the owner called everyone together and spoke with a serious voice. Business was not good. Customers were fewer. Expenses were higher. The workshop would close. The words hit him like a heavy tool. For months he had worked, learned, and grown. He had become a problem solver. Customers asked for him. He felt useful. Now all of it was disappearing. This was the crisis. Some workers became angry. They complained. They asked why this was happening. Others stayed silent and worried. A few began searching for new jobs immediately. The young man felt the same fear. If the workshop closed, where would he go? He had no school certificate, no diploma, no official training. Who would hire someone like him? The contrast was sharp. Stability had vanished. For a long time, the workshop had provided routine. He knew where to go each morning. He knew his tasks. He knew the people around him. Now uncertainty replaced everything. The future looked like a closed road. It would have been easy to panic. It would have been easy to say, "I am unlucky." It would have been easy to blame the economy or the owner. But his secret habit gave him something powerful: calm thinking. When problems appear, panic rarely helps. Solutions come from clear observation. Instead of giving up, he asked questions. Why was business failing? Were customers going to other shops? Were prices too high? Were services outdated? He did not know all the answers, but he wanted to understand. He began studying the market. He listened to customers more carefully. What problems did they mention? What complaints did they repeat? Some said repairs took too long. Others said prices were confusing. A few mentioned they wanted faster service and clear explanations. He reviewed past mistakes. Sometimes repairs had small delays because parts were not organized. Sometimes communication with customers could have been clearer. These were not disasters. They were lessons. The secret habit of daily reflection now became more important than ever. Each night he asked himself, "What did I learn today? What could I improve?" Even though the workshop situation was outside his control, his thinking was still within his control. He realized something important. His skill did not depend on one workshop. His knowledge of machines remained valuable. People always needed transportation. Cars and motorcycles always needed maintenance. The industry might change, but the need for solutions would remain. This understanding reduced his fear. Stability is comfortable, but life is not always stable. Employees may lose jobs, businesses may close, markets may shift. These events are difficult, but they are not the end. He also noticed an opportunity. If the old workshop closed, perhaps he could find a different path. Maybe he could work independently. Maybe he could help customers directly. Maybe he could start small. At first, the idea felt risky. He had no big savings. He had no official business training. He was not a university graduate. But he had something valuable. skill and experience. He understood engines. He understood customer problems. He understood how to fix things. These abilities were real. They were stronger than a certificate on paper. Instead of waiting for someone to hire him, he began thinking like a problem solver. What if he offered small repair services directly? What if he helped neighbors and local customers? What if he built trust through quality work? This was a shift in mindset. He moved from employee thinking to entrepreneurial thinking. Employees follow instructions. Entrepreneurs solve problems. Employees wait for tasks. Entrepreneurs create value. The crisis forced him to grow. He started speaking with people in the community. He asked if they needed help with repairs. Some agreed. Small jobs began coming in. He repaired a motorcycle for a neighbor. He fixed a minor issue for a local shop. Word spread slowly. The income was not large at first. There were challenges. He had to organize tools. He had to manage time. He had to communicate directly with customers. But he applied the same habit of daily improvement. After each job, he reviewed what went well and what could be better. Could the repair have been faster? Could explanations to the customer have been clearer? Small improvements created better results. The crisis had changed his path, but it had not ended his journey. It forced him to think differently. It pushed him to rely on skill instead of stability. It showed him that success is not guaranteed, but growth is always possible. This was not the end. It was the beginning. Building his own workshop. He decided to take a small step. He rented a tiny space, nothing fancy, just a simple garage where he could work. It was not a big workshop. There were no shining signs or expensive equipment. Only a small room, a few tools, and a strong determination. This was his own workshop. There was a clear contrast between his dream and his reality. His dream was large. He imagined serving many customers and building a trusted business. He imagined solving difficult problems and earning respect. But his reality started small. A small space, a single toolbox, and limited resources. Some people would see this as a disadvantage. They would say, "You cannot compete with big factories." They would compare his tiny garage with large professional workshops. They would point at the difference and feel discouraged. But he saw something different. He saw possibility. A big building is not required to do good work. Expensive machines are helpful, but skill and care are more important. Large companies may have advantages, but small businesses can build strong relationships with customers. He remembered his secret habit. Every day he reviewed his work. He asked himself important questions. What worked today? What failed? How can service improve? This habit became the foundation of his new workshop. At first, customers were few. Some people doubted him. They preferred bigger workshops with famous names. They thought a small garage could not provide professional service. This was understandable. People often trust what looks large and established. But he focused on quality. When a customer brought a problem, he listened carefully. He did not rush. He examined the machine with patience. He explained the issue in simple words so the customer could understand. He offered honest solutions. If a repair was possible, he did it with care. If it was difficult, he explained the options. Customer service began to improve. People noticed that he treated them with respect. He answered questions. He explained prices clearly. He finished repairs on time. Small details made a difference. Trust began to grow. Word of mouth is powerful. When customers are satisfied, they tell others. A neighbor recommended his workshop to a friend recommended it to a relative. Slowly, more people arrived. Repairs also became faster. Because of daily reflection, he improved his process. He organized tools so they were easy to find. He studied common problems so he could fix them efficiently. He reviewed each job to learn from it. If a repair took too long, he asked why and searched for better methods. This was not magic, it was discipline. The small workshop became a place of growth. He worked hard, but he also worked smart. He did not repeat the same mistakes. He learned from experience. Each day brought small improvements. Then came a powerful emotional moment. A customer arrived with a difficult problem. Other workshops had tried to fix it but failed. The customer looked tired and worried. He explained the issue, hoping for a solution. The young workshop owner listened carefully. He inspected the machine. He thought about the problem. He applied his knowledge and experience. It was not easy, but he worked step by step. Finally, he found the solution. The machine started working again. The customer smiled. He thanked him sincerely. He said, "You solved a problem that others could not." These words were simple, but they carried deep meaning. The customer's gratitude showed trust and appreciation. It was more than payment. It was recognition of skill and effort. In that moment, the workshop owner realized something important. His secret habit had built this success: daily review, daily reflection, daily improvement. The habit that began in a noisy old workshop now shaped his new business. He had learned to observe problems, analyze solutions, and grow stronger. He had transformed from a worker into a problem solver, and now into a business owner. The small garage was not perfect. It was not large or luxurious, but it represented progress. It represented independence. It represented the power of discipline and learning. He understood the contrast between small beginnings and big dreams. A workshop does not need to be huge to create value. A business does not need to start with massive investment. Success grows step by step. Some people wait for perfect conditions. They say, "I will start when I have more money," or "I will begin when I know more." But he learned that waiting rarely creates progress. Action creates progress. His workshop was proof. With limited resources, he built something meaningful. With daily effort, he improved. With patience, he gained customers' trust. The dream was still growing, but it had already begun. He looked around the small garage. Tools were simple. The space was small. But the impact was real. Customers trusted him. Problems were solved. Lives were improved in small ways. This was success, not the loud success of fame or luxury, not the instant success of luck, but the steady success of hard work and learning. The journey was not finished. Challenges would continue. Business would require constant improvement. But he understood the principle. Growth comes from discipline. Skill comes from repetition. Success comes from solving problems. The small workshop became a symbol of possibility. It showed that education is not only in schools. Knowledge can come from experience. Progress can come from effort. Dreams can grow from humble beginnings. He smiled as he returned to work. But success did not stop there. Expanding into the industry. Years later, he grew his workshop. He trained other mechanics. He taught them how to observe problems and solve them step by step. Many of them were young workers, just like he once was. They did not have certificates or degrees, but they had hands and curiosity. He explained simple lessons: how to listen to an engine, how to notice small signs of damage, how to review a repair and learn from it. He told them about his secret habit, daily reflection and improvement. At first, some listened quietly, others doubted. But over time, results spoke louder than words. The workshop became more than a place for repairs. It became a place of learning. Workers asked questions. They practiced new techniques. They improved their skills. He watched them grow and felt proud. He remembered his own journey and understood that teaching was also growth. He improved systems in the business. Tools were organized better. Repairs followed clear steps. Customers received explanations about problems and solutions. This created trust. People returned because they felt respected. A good business is not only about fixing machines, it is about serving people. Sometimes he thought about bigger ideas. He designed small modification parts that improved motorcycle performance. These parts were not expensive, but they solved common problems. Customers appreciated innovation. They said the modifications made their vehicles smoother and more reliable. He began selling these custom parts. It was a small step into a larger industry. He studied design trends and customer needs. What problems did riders face? How could small improvements make a difference? He asked questions and searched for answers. This was expansion, not sudden or dramatic, but steady. The small workshop now connected to larger opportunities. He collaborated with suppliers. He learned about production. He understood that industry is a network of ideas and solutions. The contrast was powerful. He had once been a worker with limited knowledge. Now he contributed ideas. He helped design solutions. He spoke with suppliers and customers as a professional. He was still the same person, but his skills had grown. He trained more mechanics. Some of them later opened their own workshops. They applied the lessons he taught: daily reflection, customer respect, continuous improvement. The industry grew not only through one business, but through many small contributions. He realized something important. Success is not only personal. When knowledge is shared, others benefit. When skills are taught, communities grow. His journey was no longer only about him. It was about creating opportunities for others. He still studied every day. The habit never stopped. Now he studied business strategies. He learned about market trends. He observed customer behavior. Why do people choose one service over another? What creates trust? How can value be delivered? Education continued, but in a different form. No classroom, no exams, no certificates. Instead, experience and observation became teachers. He read articles, listened to advice, and reviewed his own decisions. Learning never ends. The industry also changed. Technology advanced. New machines appeared. Customer expectations evolved. He adapted by staying curious. He did not resist change. He understood that progress requires flexibility. The small modification parts business grew. Riders wanted better performance and reliability. His designs solved practical problems. Customers recommended the products to others. Word of mouth expanded opportunities. He also maintained his core values: quality work, honest communication, respect for customers. These principles created long-term trust. Businesses that ignore values may grow quickly, but they often collapse. He chose steady growth. The journey from worker to innovator was not easy. There were challenges, competition, financial risks, technical problems, but he faced them with the same mindset: observe, learn, and improve. He remembered the crisis that once threatened everything: the workshop closure, the uncertainty, the fear of failure. That experience taught him resilience. Challenges are not enemies, they are opportunities to grow. Now he looked at the industry with new eyes. Cars and motorcycles were not only machines, they were systems of engineering and human need. People need transportation. They need reliable solutions. The industry exists to serve those needs. He reflected on his journey. An illiterate boy who never went to school became a business owner and innovator, not through luck, but through discipline. Daily habits created long-term results. Repetition built skill. The lesson was clear. Success does not require formal education alone. It requires curiosity, effort, and improvement. Knowledge can come from experience. Growth comes from action. He continued expanding ideas, new projects, partnerships, training programs for young mechanics. The industry benefited from fresh talent. He believed in giving opportunities to others. His story inspired people, not because he was perfect, but because he tried. He showed that background does not define potential. A person's choices and habits shape their future. The workshop that started as a small garage became part of a larger journey. Industry innovation, skill development, community impact. These were the results of consistent effort. He smiled when he thought about the beginning, a boy with no school, no diploma, and no advantages, now an entrepreneur and mentor. The transformation was real, but it began with one decision: to learn. Expanding into the industry was not the end. It was another chapter. Growth continues, learning continues. The journey of improvement never stops. The secret habit explained clearly. The secret habit is simple. It begins with learning from your daily work. Every day you do something. You fix a problem. You talk to a customer. You use tools. These experiences are lessons. They teach you if you pay attention. The second step is review. Every night, think about what happened. What worked? What failed? Why did it happen? This reflection helps your mind understand. It turns experience into knowledge. Without review, lessons disappear. With review, they become strength. The third step is improvement. Each day choose one small thing to do better. Maybe you organize tools more neatly. Maybe you explain problems more clearly. Small improvements create big results over time. Success is not built in one day. It is built in many days. The fourth step is repetition. Do this every day. Learn, review, improve, repeat. This cycle creates growth. It builds skill. It builds confidence. It builds opportunity. Contrast helps understanding. Talent is useful, but talent without effort is not enough. Repetition makes skill. Discipline makes progress. Luck can help, but luck is not reliable. Daily action is reliable. Dreams are important, but dreams without action remain ideas. Action turns ideas into reality. This habit works in many areas of life. In business, you learn customer needs. You improve service. You build trust. In art, you practice. You refine your style. You grow. In English learning, you read. You listen. You practice. Improvement comes step by step. The secret habit is not magic. It is simple. Learn, review, improve, repeat. Anyone can use this method. It does not require special education. It requires commitment. It requires patience. It requires effort. Success in car or motorcycle industries is not different. Mechanics observe. They learn. They solve problems. They improve. Industry rewards skill and reliability. It values solutions. The secret habit helps create solutions. It builds understanding. It builds expertise. You can use this habit anywhere, in work, in learning, in personal growth. The principle is universal. Observation, reflection, improvement. Now, the most important question: will you try this habit? It starts small. It starts today. You do not need perfect conditions. You need willingness. You need consistency. Many people wait for the right moment. The right moment often does not come. Action creates moments. Learning creates opportunities. Reflection creates understanding. Improvement creates results. Think about your daily work. What lessons can you learn? What small improvement can you make? This is the secret. Simple actions repeated over time create big change. Do not underestimate small steps. A journey of 1,000 kilometers begins with one step. Growth begins with one decision. You can start now. You can improve. You can learn. You can grow. This is the power of the secret habit. It does not matter where you start. It matters where you go. Some people start with advantages. Some start with difficulties. The habit works for everyone. Knowledge grows. Skill grows. Confidence grows. Opportunities grow. This is not theory. It is practice. It is experience. It is improvement. Remember, learn, review, improve, repeat. This cycle never ends. Growth never ends. Learning never ends. That is the secret. Success is not a single event. It is a process. It is a journey. Some days are easy. Some days are difficult. The habit keeps you moving. It keeps you improving. Even small progress matters. A little improvement today becomes strength tomorrow. This is how industries grow. This is how people grow. This is how success grows. Now think again. What will you learn today? Learning is power. Reflection is understanding. Improvement is progress. You have the ability to grow. Your industry, your success. Your journey in this story shows a powerful truth. The man in our story had no school education. He had no certificate. He had no degree in engineering. He started as a worker in a small workshop. He learned through experience. He observed machines. He solved problems. He reviewed his work every day. Over time, his skill grew. His confidence grew. His opportunities grew. Success came not from paper education, but from daily discipline and improvement. This contrast is important. Excuses stop progress. Action creates progress. Some people say they cannot succeed because they are uneducated or poor. They focus on what they lack. The man in our story focused on what he could do. He built skill. He built knowledge. He built a business. Background matters less than behavior. Your past does not decide your future. Your daily actions decide your future. You may not have perfect education. You may not have money. You may face difficulties. These challenges are real, but they do not remove opportunity. Skill can be built. Knowledge can be learned. Growth happens step by step. The secret habit works for everyone. Learn from your work. Review your experiences. Improve one small thing. Repeat every day. This discipline creates results. Industry success is similar. Cars and motorcycles need solutions. Customers need trust. Businesses need quality service. If you solve problems, you create value. If you create value, opportunities appear. The man in our story became successful because he focused on solutions. He did not wait for luck. He worked. He learned. He improved. Industry rewarded his effort. Your success does not start in a classroom. It starts in your habits. Daily discipline builds skill. Daily reflection builds understanding. Daily growth builds opportunity. This principle applies to business, learning, and personal development. You can use it in English learning. You can use it in work. You can use it in life. Thank you for listening to this story and learning English with me. Stories teach lessons. Lessons create understanding. Understanding creates action. I invite you to continue learning through stories. Practice English, improve your skills, build your habits. Your success is possible. It begins today.